got to start. Got to start with the warmongers in the Trump administration because this is not a joking matter. And frankly, I don't really trust the current Democratic Party to fight Donald Trump or John Bolton or Mike Pompeo or any of these greedy, corrupt warmongers. And I knew, I covered the Trump campaign on the campaign trail. I knew he was full of it. Apparently, White House reviews military plans against Iran, echoes of the Iraq War, which the New York Times helped push us into. At a meeting of President Trump's top national security aides last Thursday, Acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan presented an updated military plan that envisions sending as many as 120,000 troops to the Middle East should Iran attack American forces or accelerate work on nuclear weapons, administration officials said. So, right there, the New York Times is simply just parroting the BS, ridiculous, totally void of any facts, warmonger neocon talking points of the Trump administration. Let me highlight this part for you. Should Iran attack American forces or accelerate work on nuclear weapons? Administration officials said. Well, why isn't the New York Times right in the first paragraph saying, should this happen? Administration officials said. By the way, there's no evidence whatsoever that Iran is thinking of or primed to attack America or American forces. This is how war propaganda begins. So, we're just going to print what the Trump administration says. The Trump administration is pushing nonsense and propaganda that's going to basically put us into another war, further bankrupting the country, further killing thousands of Americans, killing tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people in Iran. Let's just repeat the lie. If you're the New York Times. Let's just repeat the lie. Because as we know, repeat the lie, repeat the lie, repeat the lie. Then, all of a sudden, people start to worry. Well, we've got to do something. Iran is, primed to attack American forces. Don't you know? I read it in the New York Times, who just prints whatever the Trump administration says, who just prints whatever the CIA says. The revisions were ordered by hardliners led by John Bolton, Mr. Trump's national security advisor. They do not call for a land invasion of Iran, which would require vastly more troops, officials said. The development reflects the influence of Mr. Bolton, one of the administration's most virulent Iran hawks, whose push for confrontation with Tehran was ignored more than a decade ago by President George W. Bush. It is highly uncertain whether Mr. Trump, who has sought to disentangle the United States from Afghanistan and Syria, ultimately would send so many American forces back to the Middle East. It is also unclear whether the president has been briefed on the number of troops or other details in the plans. On Monday, asked about if he was seeking regime change in Iran, Mr. Trump said, "We'll see what happens with Iran. If they do anything, it would be a very bad mistake." There are sharp divisions in the administration over how to respond to Iran at a time when tensions are rising about Iran's nuclear policy and its intentions in the Middle East. I don't need to read any more of this propaganda because this is not journalism. This is helping the war profiteers and the war propagandists push war. And this is how Iraq started, folks. So let's see. I just read you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 paragraphs in the New York Times. Not one of those paragraphs says there is no evidence Iran is threatening the United States, wants to threaten the United States, is going to attack the United States. Kind of important details when talking about having 120,000 troops ready to go. And I don't really know what they're talking about. Are you having 120,000 troops ready to go to do what? The article says this is not for land invasion. Well, what's it for then? They're just going to hang out in the sky? What's alarming about this, and the New York Times, I mean, it's not just the New York Times, it's all the corporate media that's just parroting this. Okay, so your job in the headline in the beginning of the story is to say there was never any evidence that Iran wasn't following the guidelines of the nuclear deal, which is one of the few things Obama did right. The Iran nuclear deal, which was hatched under President Obama. There was never any evidence that they weren't following that deal. So that's number one. So this was the basis, right? This was the basis for the beginnings of this Trump talk about we need to get tougher on Iran. And Iran is trying, starting some funny business with us. There was never any basis for this. Trump lied. Strengthened by John Bolton and Mike Pompeo. I mean, they're basically, these two come from the Dick Cheney school of diplomacy, which means bomb, 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 bomb. War, 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 war. Oil, 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 oil. So what's incredible to me is here you have a guy, Trump, who ran on, what are we spending all this money in Iraq and Afghanistan? And if we're going to go, take the oil. Don't go there without taking the oil. One of the faux progressive policies Donald Trump ran on was, let's get the hell out of all these countries. Let's get out of all these countries and let's stop, permanently folding tents up in the Middle East. I knew it wasn't true because Trump has no actual ideology. He says what he needs to say to win the election, or in this case, the day. So if Donald Trump, since a man or woman without a true ideology is just as dangerous, if not more dangerous, than one with a pure ideology, because it means they will sell their soul for the quickest and clearest win. So let's see. Donald Trump has John Bolton in his ear. Well, if Donald Trump thinks rising tensions, or possibly starting to bomb Iran, or possibly sending in advisors to Iran, you know how the government and the U.S. suddenly send advisors to other countries, which is code for ground troops. There's no such thing as military advisors. When you're sending in soldiers to advise, you're sending in soldiers to risk their lives. They're called ground troops. What if Donald Trump thinks that his re-election in 2020 is under peril? What if Donald Trump thinks that it's likely he might lose in 2020? What if Donald Trump thinks that it's likely, remember, Russiagate and MSNBC and all these people, Bob Mueller was Jesus of Nazareth. So all of the talk was about the Mueller report. And the Mueller report might indict Trump, and the Mueller report might save us from the tyranny of Trump. Well, most actual objective people were saying the real action, the real threat to Trump is not the Mueller investigation, which I always thought was it was all a cockamamie conspiracy theory, Russia. Is the Southern District of New York, who are investigating Trump's financial transactions, his real estate empire, and could indict Trump. So what if Donald Trump thinks, well, if I don't win it, if everything I just said is true, and he's worrying about re-election, which, by the way, the polls right now, the last poll I just saw, which was Emerson, which I'm going to get to in a separate topic, Biden and Bernie Sanders have identical results against Donald Trump. They're both beating him by, I think, 8 points head-to-head. So Bernie beats Trump. 10 points. Head-to-head, Bernie beats Trump 10 points head-to-head. Biden beats Trump 10 points head-to-head. I expect Biden's will go down. What if Trump thinks, well, if I don't start a war, I'm probably not going to get reelected. And if I don't get reelected, the New York Southern District might be waiting with handcuffs for all the money laundering and financial schemes and tax avoidance myself, my children, and my family have gotten away with since the 1980s. That's where Trump's legal jeopardy and peril lies. Not with Bob Mueller, not with Adam Schiff and the intelligence committees. It was never about Russian collusion or conspiracy or whatever. It's about the money. Follow the money, Lebowski. And like this live stream, even though it's not a live stream. Smash the like button if you have not. Remember, the more people that press the like button, the more people that will see this non-live stream. So, what you have here, folks, is dangerous rhetoric. And, Trump answered some reporter questions today and tamped down, that, I don't know anything about that, and blah, 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 blah. He knows everything about it. And by the way, Trump would start a war with a country if he thought it helped him politically. Which, by the way, for those of you who have watched House of Cards in your day, is one of the plot lines that Kevin Spacey, when he was still on the show, and Claire Underwood, his wife, thought that Frank was going to lose re-election. So they said, let's be diabolical and maybe start a war. George Bush, as the tide was turning against Iraq and public sentiment was moving away from Iraq in 2004, remember, George Bush played on those strands of patriotism. And what did he do? The surge in Iraq. He was reelected. So this is very dangerous. I'm not somebody who takes a lot of time in my day, and I don't spend a whole lot of time talking about Trump, because I wouldn't be delivering to you anything 25,000 other people on Twitter and 25,000 other journalists on CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, Washington Post aren't delivering. But in this case, we need to all, I don't care what you are, progressive, neoliberal, conservative, whatever, come together and say, no. We're already at war with 7 or 8 countries. We're already bombing 8 or 9 countries. The Pentagon just failed its first ever audit. The auditors said, we can't even audit them. It's not even possible to audit the Pentagon because their records are so shadowy and the numbers just don't add up. If there are numbers, because the Pentagon suddenly lost a lot of the information. And by the way, don't forget, this news about Trump and, Bolton readying 120,000 troops comes when Trump is proposing to increase the defense budget to $750 billion. And what is the Democratic Party? What is the resistance counter with? $733 billion. Oh, well, thank God. Thank God we have Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer running things with that brave counterproposal of $733 billion. And by the way, we don't, we're Americans, so we don't, well, not everyone watching is Americans. We have a lot of international viewers too. But if I was a person in Iran right now, I'd get the hell out of there if I could. Because this is deja vu, folks. Nearly 1 million Iraqis died as a result of the Iraq War. ISIS was created as a result of the Iraq War. So, make no mistake about it. Do I think that Trump is as much of a warmonger and a hawk as John Bolton? No, I do not. But it's just as dangerous to have somebody who goes with the political winds as the winds go. And Trump, if you present it to him, let's say it's, I don't know, November of this year or January of this year, less than a year from the election, and the polls aren't looking good for Donald Trump, and the head-to-heads aren't looking good for Donald Trump, and the economy's not doing as hot. A lot of economists warn of a recession possibly looming. You don't think Donald Trump would say, well, let's rally the base. Let's distract. Let's show I'm tough. Let's show action. Let's send 100,000 troops to Iran. I don't know what the New York Times is talking about, that those wouldn't be for a land war. What are you sending 120,000 troops for? You're not going to have them parked out in a surrounding province. And when America comes, they come long time, if you know what I mean. We stay. We don't just, stop by, as the cool kids like to say. Super dangerous. Super dangerous.
Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.